Hello, I'm Sister Abigail. This is the Sister Abigail Show. So far in our series, we have covered all of the clobber text. We have talked, and now we're talking about some scriptures of affirmation. Last video series, we learned about Ruth and Naomi, a same-gender couple in the scriptures, and today for this video, we're going to be learning about David and Jonathan. So stay tuned.
So I look at my favorite one, David and Jonathan. I love the story of David and Jonathan. The story of David and Jonathan can be found throughout the book of 1 Samuel, off and on. He's mentioned several times. Their relationship is talked about. Just to bring you up to date, because most of us know who David is, the first king of Israel, the second king of Israel, the greatest king Israel ever had, and when the boy that slew Goliath. And the first king of Israel, Saul, was Jonathan's father. And we read the story about David and Jonathan, and probably one of the biggest discussions at first is in chapter 18 of 1 Samuel. In verse 1 says, "After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself." That statement alone is a very telling thing about their relationship, because there's very few times in Scripture does it say someone became one in spirit or became one with another person. Matter of fact, the only other times you'll find it in Scripture is when it's referring to a marriage relationship. It says when someone became one. So here it says that Jonathan and David became one in spirit, and that he loved him as himself. So it's a very intense comment about the relationship that these two men had. Verse 2 says, "From that day Saul kept David with him and did not let him return to his father's house." Now, why would it be significant that it was not, if you read the scriptures, David had already killed Goliath. That should have been enough for for Saul to want to keep him in his house. But it doesn't say that he kept him at his house after that. It says after David and Jonathan became one in spirit, that Saul kept David at his home there at the palace. So it's a very and if you go on and read, it's, I don't think it's coincidence that Saul chose this time to allow David to stay there. It says after they became one in spirit that this occurs. In verse 3 it says, "And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt." That is a very powerful covenant between two men of that day and age. Basically, if you read it, it says he took off his robe, he was wearing, and along with his tunic and his sword and his bow and his belt. So basically, he disrobed, and he gave him everything that he was wearing, and became naked before him in this covenant. So that is a covenant that is. It's not a covenant that occurs between mere friends. It's not something that just because, hey, this is my best friend, that I'm going to do this type of a covenant with. This is an emotional covenant that by its very act speaks of a physical, completely bonding here. If matter of fact, if he had been a woman, they would be married. If a woman had disrobed in front of him, and they would have considered that to be a marriage covenant, so it's just in our modern day understanding of covenants, we don't see it that way. But as we go into this story, I think you'll find some interesting things about it. In 1 Samuel 18:20 verses 21, there's another comment. And the NIV isn't a very good translation of it, but I'm going to read it from the NIV. It says, "Now Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David, and when they told Saul about it, he was pleased. 'I will give her to him,' he thought, 'so that she may be a snare to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him.' So Saul said to David, 'Now you have the second opportunity to become my son-in-law.' Don't like the way the NIV translates. It's not an accurate translation in this case. The King James actually has one of the better translations. The King James says, "Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the one of the twain." If you go back and if you read the original Hebrew, the way it's worded, there isn't. It really isn't worded very well either way to bring out what the literal translation is in this situation. First of all, let me back up and make sure you're aware. Saul offers his first daughter, to David right after he kills Goliath. Remember, the part of the bounty on the Goliath's head was whoever kills him gets to marry the king's daughter. And and we don't know much about what she looked like, but for whatever reason, after David kills Goliath, he's like, "No, I don't want her. No, that's right. You keep her." and you read the story, she marries someone else. And so the King James preserves the original text in verses 20 and 21 the best, implying that David would become Saul's son-in-law through one of the twain. Twain means two. The three words, one of the, they don't exist in the original Hebrew text. That's been added. The words, as a matter of fact, most of the King James Bibles, if it's in one of the newer publishers, it's italicized when you see one of the, because that's to show that it's been added. The editors added that to clarify what was being said. Literally translated, the phrase would say, "And said Saul to David, a second time today you will be my son-in-law." That would be the literal translation from the Hebrew. Would have not an opportunity. He's not saying here an opportunity. There's not a word in the Hebrew there that would indicate that. But said Saul to David, "A second time today, you will be my son-in-law." Modern English today, if we were to put that over into a little bit clearer English today, we would probably say, "Today you are my son-in-law with two of my children." We already eliminated the first one. David kicked her out and sent her to somebody else. And so Saul recognizes here that David already has a son-in-law relationship with him through one of his children. Well, there's only two children left. There's Jonathan and there's Michal. And she's the one he's married the second time. So Saul indicates here that he is acknowledging a covenant relationship between David and Jonathan. He is acknowledging at this point, David and Jonathan have made a covenant. It says that in verse 1 that David and Jonathan became one in spirit. That same term that we see referred to marriage. They became one in spirit. Immediately after, Saul says, "Now you're going to stay in the temple. You're going to stay here in the palace. You're not going back home. You're going to stay with me." And then he says, "Now a second time you're going to become my son-in-law because I'm going to marry off to my daughter." So Saul has acknowledged, here that David was technically already his son-in-law through his relationship with Jonathan. Wow. It's amazing that people have overlooked that and missed that in today's world. Now, there's another verse that's I think is extremely telling. When I found this scripture, I was amazed that all these years I had missed it. In chapter 20, in verse 41, it says, "After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone," this is when they're getting ready to be separated, "and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. Then they kissed one another and wept together, but David wept the most." The Hebrew word that's used there is gadish. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. It's Gadiyysh. Strong's defines the word as being from an unused root meaning to heap up or to define as a stack of sheaves. And it's a really unusual word that you don't see very much. Zondervan's Greek and Hebrew definitions is probably the one that has the most extensive definition of this particular word. And the word that they use is to grow up, be exalted, to grow long, to make great, exalt. And in referring here to a physical event, because if you read the text of what is happening, it says that they're that they're embracing one another, they're getting ready to separate. So the indication is here that it was that that one of them was aroused during this contact. It goes beyond simply just a kissing. That there was an arousal is the best word for it. I hate to use that word, but that's the best word. The final reference that we see about the relationship is in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 26. This makes it so clear in the relationship that David and Jonathan shared, and David's love for Jonathan. And I would challenge you, at least for me, I had to mark this in my Bible, because this is really a great statement in Scripture as far as the relationship that two men can have, and it's very affirming to me as a gay man. It says, "I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women." So here he says, talking about this man that he had a covenant with, who was one in spirit with him, whom he loved, and he says that your love was, even more wonderful than that of women. Now, those of us who are gay men can identify with that. We understand how that is possible. Heterosexual men often have a hard time understanding that. But from everything we read, Jonathan's love for David was something that David considered even greater than the love of women. Just an incredible relationship.